हरि ओम नमः सर्वेभ्यः। अष्टाध्यायी परिचयः इत्यस्य अद्य नवमः पाठः। अस्मिन् वर्गे प्रकृतिप्रत्ययविभागः इति विषयम् अनुसृत्य किञ्चित् पठामः। आदौ वन्दनम्। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयम्। अस्माकं वर्गस्य द्वे प्रयोजने अष्टाध्याय्याः आहत्य 400 सूत्राणां व्याख्यासहितम् उदाहरणसहितं च अध्ययनं, तथा च अष्टाध्याय्याः प्रथमाध्यायस्य प्रथमपादस्य कण्ठस्थीकरणम्। इदानीम् अस्मिन् वर्गे व्याकरणस्य मूलः विषयः प्रकृतिप्रत्ययविभागः इत्यस्य चिन्तनम् अस्माभिः करिष्यते। परन्तु तस्मात् पूर्वम् अस्माकं गणे एका चर्चा या अभूत्, तस्याः विषये किञ्चित् संशयनिराकरणं करोमि। So there was some discussion on the group. There was some confusion about savarnas and specifically for the ayogavahas. So let me clarify a few things. Most of these things were already discussed in the video. So actually it helps if you go back and listen to the video once or twice. If you just listen the class once, it's not possible for you to grasp everything. So that's always a good idea to go back and watch. But anyway, let me clarify these fundamental aspects. So first point to understand is that when it comes to the abhyantara prayatnas of the ayogavahas, Paniniya Vyakaran does not say anything about it. Paniniya Vyakarane ayogavahanam abhyantara prayatnaha na nirdishtaha santi. Towards the end of each of the previous classes, when I'm giving you some material to memorize, even those commentaries do not have any statement about the abhyantara prayatnas of ayogavahas. Same with bahya prayatnas, but let's talk about abhyantara prayatnas for now. However, in our slide deck, I have written abhyantara prayatnas of ayogavahas because ruk pratishakye asmin vishaye nirdeshah vartate. So I explicitly wrote this on the slide that the ayogavahas are classified as ushmanas in the Rigveda pratishakya, and ushmanas are all ishad vivruta, and therefore automatically ayogavahas become ishad vivruta. By the way, this word is Ishad Vivruta, not Ishad Vivruttaha. In some homeworks, I saw Samvruttaha, Vivruttaha. So there is no double takara. Vru is the verb plus kta pratyaya. So vru plus ta becomes vruta. So Vivruta, Samvruta, and so on. Now, having said this, in Paniniya Vyakarana, the Ayogavahas are not being discussed when it comes to Abhyantara Prayatnas. And subsequently, Abhyantara Prayatnas are required for the Savarna Samnya. So it follows that Savarna Samnyayaha Sandarbhena Ayogavahanam Paniniya Vyakarane Chintanam na kriyate. Kimartham na kriyate? So everything eventually boils down to one thing, that anything that you define in Paniniya Vyakarana, is it required for the further Prakruti Pratyaya combination to form the sadhu words? If there is no use of the Savarna Samnya of the Ayogavahas for a Prakruti Pratyaya combination process, there is no point in defining it. So you can always define and say all sorts of things like Hakara and Visarga are Savarnas or not Savarnas and so on. It is debatable. But as far as Paniniya Vyakarana is concerned, Savarna Samnyayaha Sambandhena Ayogavahanam Chintanam na bhavati. अतः के सवर्णाः सन्ति. So I'm just giving the full table over here for your convenience. अवर्णस्य सर्वेपि 18 भेदाः. So उदात्त अनुदात्त स्वरित multiplied by ह्रस्व दीर्घ प्लुत multiplied by अनुनासिक निरनुनासिक. Same for E varna and U varna. For Ru varna and Lu varna, the 18 plus 12 are परस्पराणां सवर्णाः. किमर्थमिति चेत् Ru Lu वर्णयोः मिथः सावर्ण्यं वाच्यम्. So 18 plus 12, all 30s are savarnas of each other. So which means that udatta, anununasika, rasva, rukara, is a savarna of remaining 29 in pair, and so on for everybody else. Similarly, A varnasya dvadasha bhedaha, I varnasya dvadasha bhedaha, O varnasya, Au varnasya cha. So this is all about the swaras. On the Vyanjana side is just row by row, Ka vargaha, Cha vargaha, Ta vargaha, Ta vargaha, and Pa vargaha. And finally, when it comes to Antasthas, the Anunasika and the Niranunasika are savarnas of each other. So Ya varnasya dvau bhedau, Va varnasya dvau bhedau, La varnasya dvau bhedau. So these are all savarnas of each other. Beyond that, there is no discussion of the savarna samya in Paniniya Vyakarana. So hopefully this answers the long debate that was going on the group. If there is any question in this particular context, I am happy to take this at the moment. Otherwise, we will move on to the topic. So Vishayam Prarabhamahe. So as we have already seen all the way in the very first class, Kim Nama Vyakaranam iti chet. Vyakaranam Pruthakkaranam iti asti. Vyakriyante ityukte Pruthakriyante Shabdaha. And when you look at this separation of words into something, etadrisham Pruthakkaranam dvividham dviprakarakam asti. You can divide a word in two styles. One, you can actually divide the word in the varnas. So varna rupena prithakkaranam. Ramaha ityasya prithakkaranam kim iti chet ra plus a plus ma plus a plus visargaha. Anena rupena prithakkaranam sambhavati. This prithakkaranam is based on the pronunciation. Uchcharanam anusritya prithakkaranam asti. Ayam shiksha shastrasya vishayaha. And this is what we have been seeing in the course for the last 5-6 classes. So we talked about the prithakkaranam all the way in the beginning of the course. And then we spent 6 classes on the most fundamental part or type of prithakkaranam, which is varana rupena prithakkaranam. The problem with this prithakkaranam is that this kind of prithakkaranam is mostly meaningless when it comes to the actual meaning or usage of the words. So, atra varnanam svesham arthaha navartante. R or a or ma don't mean anything in particular which contributes towards Ramaha. So even if, there are ekakshara koshas where meaning of each varna is discussed in details. So for example, A is what Vishnu and U is Mahadeva and say Dirgha E is Lakshmi and Rasva E is Kamadeva and so on. There are koshas which give these meanings with some logic. Parantu ete sarve arthaha atra varnanam ekatrikaranam yada bhavati tatra na prayoktavyaha. अतः वर्णानां स्वेषाम् अर्थाः न वर्तन्ते वर्तन्ते चेदपि तेषां योजनेन शब्दस्य अर्थः न सिद्ध्यति. So when it comes to looking at towards a word as a construct which has a meaning, because when you say Ramaha, some meaning appears in your brain, and for that meaning, this ra plus a plus ma is completely a useless division. And therefore, we come to the more important division, which is Prakruti Pratyaya Rupena Prithakkaranam, which is the central topic of Vyakarana Shastra. So, Varna Rupena Prithakkaranam iti Shiksha Shastrasya Vishayaha, Prakruti Pratyaya Rupena Prithakkaranam iti Vyakarana Shastrasya Vishayaha, Kimartham iti chet idam artham anusrutya kritam Prithakkaranam asti. So, if you take the word Ramaha, you break it down into two components, Rama and Su. Rama is the Prakruti, Su is the Pratyaya. Each of these, that is the Prakruti and the Pratyaya, has its own meaning. Prakrutehe pratyasya cha swasya swasya arthaha vartate. Tau arthau ekatri bhuya shabdasya artham dyotayataha. So when you take this first component called Rama, it is the Prakruti and it indicates a meaning. Say Ramatva Vishishta Kaschana Padarthaha. Lakshmanasya Agrajaha, Dashrathasya Nandanaha, Kausalyaha. So we have a central idea of what Rama is, and that idea has nothing to do with the Vibhakti Pratyaya attached to it. So whether you say Ramam, Ramena, Ramasya, Ramaya, Ramat, Ramana, that central idea remains as it is. That is the idea of Ramatva. the idea of being Ram, that is the meaning of Prakriti. And then when you add the supratyaya, that meaning gets amended, gets modified, gets controlled by that pratyaya. So Rama ityanena kevalam Ramatvasya nirdeshah bhavati. On the top of that, you add the supratyaya, which is the prathama ekvachana pratyaya, and it indicates ekatva, the quantity of one. Therefore, when you combine Rama and Su to give Ramaha, एक संख्यकः रामत्व विशिष्ट पदार्थः इति रामः इति शब्दस्य अर्थः सिद्ध्यति. So the central understanding over here is that every word is divided in Vyakarana into Prakruti Pratyaya Vibhagaha, and this division is not random, but it is semantic. It is based on the meaning. So शब्दस्य तथाविधं विभागद्वये विभाजनं यत्र द्वयोः विभागयोः अर्थौ एकत्रीभूय they come together पदस्य इत्युक्ते शब्दस्य अर्थं निर्दिशतः. एतादृशे विभाजने कृते when you do such a division, one of the entities is called Prakriti and other entity is called Pratyaya. Typically, the one that occurs on the left is Prakriti, the one that occurs on the right is Pratyaya. There are some minor exceptions, but we can keep them aside. More importantly, when it comes to the Artha, the meaning, Yaha Vibhagaha Moola Shabdasya Artham Mukhya Rupena Darshayati. So you say Ramaha, Ramo, Ramaha, Ramat, Ramena, Ramana. What is the central theme over there? That is Prakriti. And yaha vibhagaha moola shabdasya arthasya niyamanam karoti. It bounds or binds that artha only to a certain context. So when you say Ramat, that original Rama is only now bound to the context of apadana. So niyamanam karoti. Tasmin kinchit parivartanam karoti. Sometimes the meaning will get changed. For example, Dasharatha plus iya will become Dasharathi. It the meaning changes, it now becomes Dasharathasya putraha. So kinchit parivartanam karoti saha pratyayaha namna jnayate. This way, every word is divided into Prakriti and Pratyaya, and that's what the whole story or idea, concept behind Vyakarana is. And when we say all words are divided, let's put it more formally. कस्य प्रकृति प्रत्यय विभागः क्रियते सर्वेषां पदानां प्रकृति प्रत्यय विभागः क्रियते. So for example, here is a tinganta pada pathami. We break it down into prakriti called patha and pratyaya called mipa. So atra patha ityanena pathana kriyayaha nirdeshah bhavati. That pathana kriya is central across forms like pathati, pathata, pathanti and so on. Whereas mip pratyaya limits that kriya to first person singular or uttama purusha ekvachanam. So pathami ityanena, these two meanings get combined. Vaktuhu swasya pathana kriyayaha nirdeshaha bhavati. Patha iti prakritihi, mipa iti pratyayaha. Another example, Rama plus ngasi, panchami ekvachanasya pratyaha gives Ramat. Here, Rama, which represents Dashratha Nandana, Dashrathasya putraha, so that is Prakriti. The ngasi pratyaya, which is the panchami vibhakti pratyaya, talks about separation, apayaha. So that is an extra meaning added on the top of Rama. So that becomes a pratyaya. Both meanings are combined. Ramat would mean Dashratha Nandanasya Pakshataha, from Dashratha Nandana. So Rama iti prakritihi, ngasi iti pratyayaha. In this way, every pada, we are using a technical term over here. I'm going to define it on the next slide. So pratyekam padasya vyakarane prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha bhavati. And now let's define this technical term called pada. Kim nama padam? This pada concept is so central that every shastra that deals with words will have a definition for the word pada in some or the other way. So for example, Tarka Sangraha, which is न्याय वैशेषिक प्रकरण ग्रंथ will define pada as shaktam padam. Shakta ityukte arthabhidhane shaktam. One that is capable of expressing some meaning is a pada. So different ways are there to define the same entity, and I'm going to share some more definitions. More or less they are going to be same. They will focus on different aspects of that particular concept called pada. So the word pada is defined in Nirukta as Nama Akyatam Upasarga Nipatascha Padani. Nirukta classifies pada into four groups. Nama, which is the Nama pada, the nominal forms. Akhyata is the verb forms. What we typically call tingantas in Vyakarana, the word used in Nirukta is akhyata. So Nama padas, the Kriya padas, the akhyatas, upasargas are being explicitly separated out and being called as padas, and nipata, which means avyayas, they are also padas. So nama, akhyata, upasarga, and nipata, these are all padas, and this is a line, the sutra in Nirukta, nama akyatam upasarga nipatascha padani. Gautama's Nyaya Sutra has a definition of pada where he says, te vibhakyantaha padam. Vibhakti pratyanta words are called pada. Again, it's one and the same thing because the Ramaha, Ramo, Ramaha are also vibhakyanta. Pathati, Pathata, Patanti are also vibhakyanta. The ting pratyas are also called vibhaktis. Those of you who don't know, we will learn it in the due course. So basically, it's a different way of saying that supratyanta words and ting pratyanta words, which are nothing but the vibhakyanta words, are padas. There are some other books which do not define the word pada, but they talk about some important aspects of what a pada looks like. So, Vakya Ekadeshaha Padam. Ekadesha means one part. When you speak a Vakya, there are distinct parts where you have a choice of stopping. So, when you say Ramaha Lakshmanena Saha Vanam Gachati, you cannot pause between Ramaha. So, Ra and Ma, you cannot pause. But between Ramaha and Lakshmanena, you have a choice of taking a pause. We have discussed this aspect while discussing Samhita. So different logical units inside a Vakya, that is called Ekadesha, Ekaha Avayavaha Vakyasya, Pruthagrupena Ucharyamanaha Avayavaha Saha Padam Asti. A similar definition, each of these individual unit will have its own meaning. So you can break after Ramaha because Ramaha has a meaning. You cannot break after just Ra and then take a pause and say Maha because Ra doesn't have a separate meaning that contributes to Ramaha. So the next definition follows from this. Arthabodhakam yat shabdaswarupam tat padam. So vakye prayuktaha arthavachakaha shabdaha padam asti. And one of the very important rules in Sanskrit language, you can only use padas in a sentence. Vakye padanam eva prayogaha bhavati apadam na prayunjita. I have seen so many homeworks, just randomly pratipadikas and dhatus are listed without even thinking about is this a pada. So if something is not a pada, you cannot use it in a Sanskrit sentence. You cannot say just Rama unless it is the Sambodhana Ekvachana that you're referring to. Or you just cannot say similarly Muni. It is not a valid pada at all. Say Munihi, Muni, Munayaha, and so on. So in this way, you cannot use individual pratipadikas or dhatus. You must make them pada. There is only one exception when you are actually quoting a pratipadika or a dhatu and you are using the word called iti. So you specifically want to say Rama as a pratipadika. So for example, Rama iti akaranta pratipadikam asti. Bhu iti dhatuhu asti. So when you are actually quoting it as a verbatim string of characters about which you are talking, then that is okay because then it is treated as a special word in the quotes. It's not to be treated as the actual word in the sentence, and then you put an iti after that. Except for this situation, vakye padanam eva प्रयोगः भवति. And we have seen all sorts of shastras what they talk about pada. Let's conclude by saying what Vyakarana says. Subantam tingantam cha padam. Vyakarana says pada is an entity that ends in a sup pratyaya, so it is called a subanta, or the one that ends in a ting pratyaya called a tinganta. So प्रकृति प्रत्यय विभाजनस्य आधारेण पदानां प्रकारद्वयं वर्तते, सुबंत पदानि नो चेत् तिङन्त पदानि. Any questions so far? So what are these subanta padas? They are nama padas. Here is an example. Ramaha Lakshmanena Sitaya cha saha vanam gatavan. All these are subantas. Ramaha Lakshmanena Sitaya, even cha and saha avyayani api nama padani eva santi. Upasargaha in Paniniya Vyakarana are also avyayas, so they are also namapadas. So going back to the previous screen, Nirukta has four groups: Nama, Akhyata, Upasarga and Nipata. But in Paniniya Vyakarana, Upasargas are included in the namapadas, Nipatas are also included in the namapadas. So as we learn in little bit more details, I will teach you a small hierarchy. So upasargas, there are 22 of those upasargas. They are called nipataha. To start with, there is an inner circle of upasargaha and then there is an external circle of nipataha. So there are many nipatas, some of which are upasargas. So all upasargas are nipatas. And then there is an even further outer circle which is the avyayas. So there are avyayas which are non-nipatas and there are avyayas which are nipatas, and inside that there will be upasargas. So upasargaha nipata samyakaha, sarve nipata samyakaha, avyaya samyakaha, ataha upasargaha api avyaya samyakaha, and therefore eventually they are namapadas. Technically, making them avyaya only makes them pratipadika. You add a sup pratyaya on the top of it. The sup pratyaya is elided, it is removed, but you get a namapada back. So we are going to look at this all conversion and theory in some of the upcoming classes. For now, all that you have to understand is avyayani namapadani eva. And how is this subanta pratyaya divided? And how is this subanta pada divided into prakriti pratyaya vibhaga? We have pratipadikam as the prakriti and we have sup pratyayaha. There are 21 of them. Sup pratyayaha. Ekavimshatyam pratyayeshu anyatamaha sup pratyayaha. So that's the sup pratyaya. Example, Ramaha is the subanta pada created by Rama plus su. Krishnasya is Krishna plus nasa. Vidushaha is Vidwas plus shasa. Api is api plus su. So as I mentioned earlier, api, which is the original avyaya, is a pratipadika. You add the su pratyay on it and you still get api as the final form. Same thing with pra, para, all the upasargas. So pra plus su will become pra, para plus su will become para, and so on. So in all these examples, what is the prakriti? The prakriti is called pratipadikam. It is a grammatical technical term. We are going to learn it today later in the class in an informal manner and with one of the sutras after a few classes. So prakriti is the pratipadikam and the pratyaya is one of those 21 su, aujas, and so on. Similarly, tinganta padam, so that's the second type of pada. It is the kriya padam. Asti jayate vardhate viparanapate apakshiyate vinashyati. A very famous statement. This is an example. This is a statement. It shows the 6 different stages of human shariram, human body. So jayate, it is born. Vardhate, it grows. Asti, it exists in a steady state. Viparanamate, it transforms. Apakshiyate, it starts degenerating. Vinashyati, it gets destroyed. So all these are kriya padas. Tigantanam ityukte kriya padanam prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha katham bhavati. So you have dhatu and you have one of those 18 ting pratyayas. Ashtadashasu pratyeshu anyatamaha ting pratyayaha. So asti becomes asa plus tipa, vandate becomes vanda plus g, and so on. The prakruti over here is dhatu, the pratyaya is tip plus g, and so on. So I'm aware that most of these things are very basic and a lot of you will know it, but these very fundamental aspects need to be captured thoroughly well before we can actually go to more advanced topics. So let's look at the 21 sup pratyayas. The pratipadikas are added to the sup pratyayas to get a subanta. So these are the 21 sup pratyayaha. Ete pratipadikebhyaha eva vidhiyante. Every one of you must memorize this without even a letter's mistake. So su, au, jas, out, shas. There is an extra takara here. Out, shas, ta, bhyam, bhis, nye, bhyam, bhyas, ngasi, bhyam, bhyas, ngas, os, am, ni, os, sup. So that's still saptami. And for sambodhana, it is the same pratyas of prathama. So sambodhana is not a separate vibhakti, it is prathama itself. It is called prathama sambodhana. So the prakriya differs. If you take this supratyaya, you have to decide whether you are applying it for the prathama or you are applying it for the sambodhana, and then there are special sutras that will act depending on your choice. So prathama and sambodhana pratyayas are same. As I mentioned, everybody must memorize this table. There are minor places where mistakes can happen. Understand, this is au, whereas this is out. The first pratyaya is su with an anunasika ukara over there. The last pratyaya is supa. There is a normal ukara and a pa at the end. Then there is a ngasi with an anunasika ikara over there in Panchami Ekvachanam. Immediately after that, the Shashti Ekvachanam, it is ngasa. There is no extra ikara at the end. Finally, in the Chaturthi, you have nye, and in Saptami, you have ni. So minor variations are there. These are 21 sup pratyayas. The interesting point is, you have so many different subanta tables, but all of them are created with this set of 21 pratyayas. So sarvebhyah pratipatikebhyah ete eva sup pratyayaha vidhiyante. So Rama plus su, prathama ekvachanam will be Ramaha. Mala plus out, dvitiya dvivachanam will be Male. Phala plus shasa, prathama bahuvachanam, dvitiya bahuvachanam shasa will be Phalani. The same Dvitiya Bahuvachana Pratyaya when added to Vidvas becomes Vidushaha. Vacha plus Bhyam, it could be any of Tritiya, Chaturthi, Panchami, Vagbhyam. Rajan plus Am, Shashti Bahuvachanam, Radnyam. Nadi plus Su, which is the same Prathama Pratyaya but used in the context of Sambodhana, gives Nadi, and so on. And all these pratyayas are applicable to almost every pratipadika. There are very few exceptions. केभ्यश्चन प्रातिपदिकेभ्यः केवलं विशिष्ट वचनानां प्रत्ययाः एव विधीयन्ते. सो द्वि इति शब्दात् केवलं द्विवचनस्य प्रत्ययाः एव भवन्ति. अप मीन्स वाटर इत्यस्मात् शब्दात् केवलं बहुवचनस्य प्रत्ययाः एव भवन्ति. So there are handful of exceptions over here where only one particular column will get used, but other than that, in general, for all pratipadikas, all these pratyayas will be used. So that was the story of the sup pratyaya. Similarly, we have the 18 ting pratyayas. Dhatu plus ting pratyaya gives tingantam. So ete ting pratyayaha dhatubhyaha eva vidhiyante. These are 18 ting pratyayas, 9 of parasmai pada, 9 of atmane pada. Again, you have to memorize this exactly as they are written. Tip tas jhi, sip thas th, mip was mas. So these are 9 of parasmai pada. Observe that the first ekavachanam for all three ends in a pakara. The dvivachanam of all three ends in a sakara. So tip, sip, and mip, and tas, thas, and was. And then ji, th, and mas is the uttama purusha bahuvachanam. Tip, tas, ji, sip, thas, th, mip, was, mas. In atmanepada, ta, atam, jha, thas, atham, dhvam, Observe the minor difference, atam versus atham. Just like in the Parasmaipada, tas versus thas. I mean, some of you might think this is all silly that I'm talking, but I have seen students making exactly these mistakes. That's why I'm enforcing this. Right in the beginning, this has to be clarified, and you need to memorize it with keeping these points in mind. So, thas, atham, dhvam, it, there's a takara over here, it, wahi, mahing. In Vahi, there is no Ngakara at the end. It is not Vahing Pratyaya. Vahi and finally Mahing. So, Ete Ashtadasha Ting Pratyayaha Santi. The first 9 are called Parasmai Pada. They are divided into Prathama, Madhyama, Uttama Purusha. The next 9 are called Atmane Pada. They are divided into Prathama, Madhyama, Uttama Purusha. In all the lakaras, for all the dhatus, it is exactly these pratyas that get added. Panini does not give separate pratyas for lat lakara and separate for lot and separate for lung and so on. What he will give are the transformations, are the prakruti pratyaya differentiation. Like for lat lakara, these actions will happen. For lot lakara, these actions will happen. But the starting point, when you say Prakruti Pratyaya Vibhaga, that's your initial place, you always have one of these 18 Pratyayas. And unlike Pratipadikas, where for every Pratipadika, all 21 Pratyayas were possible, Atra kim bhavati? Kebhyashchana dhatubhyaha kevalam parasmaipada samyaka pratyayaha, केभ्यश्चन धातुभ्यः केवलम् आत्मनेपद सम्यक प्रत्ययाः, केभ्यश्चन धातुभ्यः सर्वेपि प्रत्ययाः विधीयन्ते. So for example, for patha we get only the parasmai samyaka pratyaya. So patha plus tip, same prakriti pratyay combination will return pathati in the lat lakara, papatha in the lit lakara, pathatu in the lot lakara, and so on. So depending on the lakara, the prakriya will differ. Just like in the case of Pratipadika, depending on whether it is Prathama or whether it is a Sambodhana, Prakriya was going to differ. Same thing happens over here. So Vanda, it is an Atmanepadi Dhatu. So you must use the Ta Pratyaya. You cannot use the Tip Pratyaya. It is not a Parasmaipadi Dhatu. So Vanda plus Ta, in Lat Lakara, it will become Vandate, Lit Lakara, it will become Va Vande, and in Lot Lakara, it will become Vandatam. Pach is Ubhayapadi. So Parasmaipada Pratyas are also possible. Atmanepada Pratyas are also possible. So you can add Tippa to get Pachati, Papacha, Pachatu, and so on. Or you can add Ta to get Pachate, Peche, Pachatam, and so on. So this is the two-way, the fundamental two-way division of the pratyas, the sup pratyas that are added to the pratipadikas and the ting pratyas that are added to the dhatus. Any questions so far? Hopefully not. Everything was pretty basic. More complex things are coming from the next slide. So we have seen in the previous equation that we have Subantam, which is Pratipadikam plus Supratyaya. So that's one of the Prakrutis over there, the Pratipadikam. And then Tigantam is Dhatu plus Ting Pratyaya. So that's another Prakruti over there, Dhatu. Atha Prakruti api dvidha dviprakar ka asti Pratipadikam tatha Dhatuhu. Let's talk about Dhatuhu. Kim naam Dhatuhu iti chet Kriyapadasya Moola Swarupam. Whatever Kriyapada, Pathati, Hasati, Chalati, we saw just now, right? Asti, Jayate, Vardhate, and so on. So, Tasya Moola Swarupam Dhatuhu iti namna uchyate. Here are some examples. Bhu, Patha, Vanda, Katha, Kathi, Chikathisha, Kashtaya, Putriya, Satyapi are all dhatus in Sanskrit. Some of them look very familiar. Bhu, Patha, Vanda, Katha. Some are probably on the borderline. Kathi, Chikathisha. And some, probably many of you are questioning, is this really a dhatu? So yes, Kashtaya, there is different Kashta word whose Chaturthi Ekvachanam will be Kashtaya. That's not what I'm talking. There is a verb called Kashtaya. There is a verb called Putriya. Satyapi, well, there is a different Satya plus Api that becomes Satyapi, but that's irrelevant. There is a verb called Satyapi. So these are all dhatus in the Sanskrit Vyakarana. एतेभ्यः धातुभ्यः तिङ् प्रत्ययः यदा प्रयुज्यते तदा तिङन्तस्य इत्युक्ते क्रियापदस्य निर्माणं भवति. And Every Vyakarana has its own Dhatu Patha. I think I discussed this point earlier, but in general, every Vyakarana will have its own Shiksha, it will have its own Dhatu Patha, it will have its own Sutras, and so on. So, Pratyekam Vyakaranasya Swasya Dhatu Patha asti. So, Paniniya Vyakaranasya Dhatu Patha, I'm going to take one full class probably next week on the Dhatu Patha. So, Paniniya Vyakaranasya Dhatu Pathe आहत्य प्रायेण 2000 धातवः सन्ति 2000, but it's not necessary that all the dhatus are there in that dhatu patha. So you can find bhu, patha, vanda, katha, and that's it. You cannot find kathi and chikathesha and kashtaya and putriya and satyapi in that dhatu patha. So भाषायां प्रयुक्ताः सर्वेऽपि धातवः धातु पाठे भवेयुः इति न आवश्यकम्. परंतु प्रत्येकं व्याकरणस्य धातुपाठः वर्तते. पाणिनीय व्याकरणस्य अपि धातुपाठः अस्ति. मुख्याः मुख्याः धातवः 2000 संख्यकाः तत्र स्थापिताः वर्तन्ते. So that's about the dhatu. For pratipadikam, it's complementary. Namapadasya moola swarupam pratipadikam asti. And Paniniya Vyakarana gives an explicit definition. Pratipadikam is defined through negation. So na iti, na iti, neti, neti, like that the Pratipadika is defined. So Pratipadikam is a word which is not a dhatu. So we have already seen now what is a dhatu. So it is not a dhatu. It is not a pratyaya. So kta, ktavatu, tumun and so on are removed. It is not a pada. So pathati or ramasya are excluded. So yaha shabdaha dhatu samyakaha nasti, pratyaya samyakaha nasti, pada samyakaha nasti, parantu arthavan asti. So basically you take that equation and you just remove the other components and whatever is remaining is the pratipadika. So arthavan asti saha pratipadika samyakaha bhavati. So deva, nadi, who, that's the name of a gandharva. So it is arthavan. Vinata, vinata, vainateya, vidwas, api, it has a meaning. Pra, it has a meaning. There is a discussion or a debate in the advanced grammar books on whether upasargas like pra, para have meanings and so on, but we'll keep that aside. For now, pra has a meaning because pathati versus pra pathati, there is a difference between the two meanings, and that pra adds that extra meaning over there. So all these have meanings, and therefore all these are pratipadikas. And pratipadikebhyah supratyasya yojanena, probably 10th time I am telling this, subantasya namapadasya nirmanam bhavati, etesham pratipadikaanam avali na vidyate. So just like the way there is dhatu patha, there is no pratipadika patha in Paniniya Vyakarana or in any Vyakarana in general, but all the pratipadikas are basically listed in the koshas. So koshaha eva atra margadarshakaha. So anena prakareण धातूनाम आवली अस्ति, परंतु प्रातिपदिकानाम आवली न वर्तते. Now let us focus on these dhatus in more details and then we will come to pratipadikas. At any point in time, if you have question, feel free to raise the hand. Whatever slide I am explaining, after I finish that slide, I'll let you ask your question. But if there are no raised hands, I'll just continue without stopping. So, okay, now people are raising hands. Okay, Purnima ji.
नमस्ते महोदय. यथा प्रातिपदिकम् अस्ति तस्यापि विभागः व्यधिकरणं भवितुं शक्यते वा, यथा देव इति शब्दस्यापि इति पदस्यापि?
इदानीं within 5 minutes I'll answer your question. Okay, it's there on one of the upcoming slides. श्रीनिवास महोदयः.
नमस्ते महोदय. अत्र प्रातिपदिकस्य विषये यत् उक्तमस्ति शब्दः इति प्रयोगः, सामान्यतया शब्दः पदम् इति स्वीक्रियते, परन्तु अत्र शब्दः तथा नास्ति किल? व्याकरणे अर्थवान् अस्ति इति आशयः, परन्तु भाषायां तस्य तादृशः प्रयोगः न वर्तते इति आशयः.
व्याकरणे सामान्यरूपेण भाषायां शब्दः इत्युक्ते पदम् इत्यस्यैव अर्थे प्रयुज्यते, परन्तु व्याकरणे शब्दः तथा पदम् इत्येतयोर्मध्ये भेदः वर्तते. शब्दः इत्यस्य समानार्थकः शब्दः व्याकरणे स्फोटः इति अस्ति. व्याकरणे शब्दस्य तत्र प्रकारद्वयं क्रियते, ध्वनिः तथा च स्फोटः. तत्र स्फोटः इत्यस्य निर्देशः शब्द इति शब्देन व्याकरणे क्रियते. व्याख्यानेषु अपि शब्दस्वरूपं प्रातिपदिकम् अस्ति इत्येव निर्देशः वर्तते। अतः भाषायां सामान्यरूपेण केवलं पदम् इत्यस्मिन् अर्थे प्रयुज्यमानः अयं शब्दः व्याकरणे तु प्रातिपदिकस्य नो चेत् वर्णसमुदायस्य एव निर्देशार्थं स्वीक्रियते इति इदानीं वक्तुं शक्यते।
अस्तु, तर्हि अत्र अर्थवान् इत्युक्ते व्याकरणे अर्थवान् इति आशयः।
भाषायाम् अर्थवान् इति। व्याकरणे बहूनां शब्दानाम् अर्थाः वर्तन्ते येषां भाषायाम् अर्थाः न सन्ति। यथा अग्रे गत्वा वयं पश्यामः, घी इति शब्दः अस्ति, नाट् द इंग्लिश घी, घी संस्कृते घ इति शब्दः अस्ति, भ इति शब्दः अस्ति, एतेषां व्याकरणे अर्थाः सन्ति परन्तु भाषायाम् अर्थाः न सन्ति। तर्हि व्याकरणस्य सूत्राणां कृते एतानि प्रातिपदिकानि एव, परन्तु भाषायाम् एतेषां प्रातिपदिकत्वं शङ्क्यमेव।
अस्तु
स्पष्टं
महोदय।
वा?
तत्र वाक्ये किम् अस्ति? यः शब्दः धातुसंज्ञकः, प्रत्ययसंज्ञकः, पदसंज्ञकः च नास्ति, तथा च अर्थवान् अस्ति, सः प्रातिपदिकसंज्ञकः भवति। तर्हि अत्र देव इति प्रातिपदिकं, देव इति भाषायां तु देव इति शब्दः पदम् इति नास्ति किल? भाषायां
पदम् इति नोक्तं किल मया, केवलम् अर्थवान् शब्दस्वरूपं। सर्वप्रथमं तु शब्दः इत्युक्ते पदम् इति केवलं सामान्यरूपेण भाषायां स्वीक्रियते, तथा व्याख्या न वर्तते। यथा सु इति अपि शब्दः एव अस्ति, राम प्लस् सु तत्र सु इति अपि व्याकरणे शब्दः एव अस्ति। वर्णसमुदायः शब्दः इत्येव व्याकरणशास्त्रे तस्य व्याख्या दीयते।
तत्रैव
सामान्यरूपेण भाषायां पदम् इत्येव तस्य प्रयोगः कृतः वर्तते।
अस्तु, सः आशयः एव मम प्रश्नस्य। शब्दसमुदायः इति शब्दः अत्र
वर्णसमुदायः इति
क्षम्यतां, वर्णसमुदायः शब्दः इति स्वीक्रियते। अस्तु, धन्यवादः।
रत्नाकर महोदय।
हाँ आचार्य, नमस्ते। श्रूयते वा मम ध्वनि?
श्रूयते।
Thing is, if I look at Pratipadika and Pratyaya, Pratipadika carries some meaning, whereas individually, and Pratyaya does not carry any meaning individually. And maybe there are a few Pratyayas that have some meaning, carry some meaning with it. Is that so what you said as far as Prakriti and Pratyaya or Pratipadika?
No, I said exactly like this. शब्दस्य तथाविधं विभागद्वय विभाजनं यत्र द्वयोः विभागयोः अर्थौ एकत्रीभूय pratyaya has a meaning X, prakriti has a meaning Y, the meanings are combined. And I have given over here as an example, I think in, for example, Ramat. Rama, prakriti has a meaning called Dasharatha Nandana. Ngasi as a pratyaya adds a meaning of apaya on it. So if Ngasi goes with Krishna, the meaning of apaya will get added on the Krishna. Same for Rama. So both of them have individual meanings and they get combined to form the meaning of the final word. Clear?
Yeah. Fine, thank you.
रेश्मा भगिनी।
नमस्ते महोदय। यत् अन्तिमं दर्शिका आसीत् तत्र धातुविषये एकं वाक्यम् आसीत्। अत्र परन्तु भाषायां प्रयुक्ताः सर्वेपि धातवः धातुपाठे भवेयुः इति न आवश्यकम्। कृपया एतस्य वाक्यस्य अर्थं पुनः वदति वा?
अत्र किमस्ति? चिकथिष इति धातु अस्ति, भाषायां प्रयुज्यते। चिकथिषति, कष्टायते, पुत्रीयति, सत्यापयति, एते सर्वे भाषायां विद्यमानानि तिङन्तपदानि एतानि सर्वाणि। तेषां मूलरूपेण विद्यमानः चिकथिष, कष्टाय, पुत्रीय, सत्यापि अयं धातुः धातुपाठे नास्ति। If you go to the dhatu patha and scan those 2000 entities, you will not see putriya, you will not see kashtaya. So sarvepi dhatavah dhatu pathe bhave iti navashyakam. Clear? Okay. Vidya Narayanan.
नमस्ते महोदय। मम प्रश्नः तत्रापि मम तत्र मित् इति वक्तव्यम् इति मन्ये। तत्र शब्दः इति मया पूर्वं कुत्रचित् पठितं, तत्र अशुद्धः भवेत्, तत् अशुद्धं भवेत्। शब्दः नाम नामपदं धातुः नाम नाम शब्दः नाम नामपदस्य प्रातिपदिकं वा तत्र नामपदस्य सम्बन्धः तत्र अस्ति, धातुः नाम तत्र क्रियापदस्य सम्बन्धः अस्ति इति न वा?
एतादृशं किमपि नास्ति. तो कंप्लीट मिसअंडरस्टैंडिंग. सो पठति इति शब्दः एव.
शब्दः
मा शब्दं कार्षीः. सो डोंट टॉक मीन्स व्हाट? डोंट अटर सिंगल वर्ड.
अस्तु अस्तु इतोपि एकः प्रश्नः तत्र भवता उक्तं किल तत्र नामपदानाम् आवलिः न दत्ता इति, परन्तु शब्दपाठः इति तु वर्तते किल?
शब्दपाठः न वर्तते. व्याकरणशास्त्रे प्रातिपदिकानाम् अधिकृता आवली नास्ति. केनचित् केषाञ्चित् शब्दानाम् एकत्रीकरणं कृत्वा एतेषां शब्दानाम् एतानि रूपाणि इति कुत्रचित् पुस्तके लिख्यते चेत् सा एव शब्दावली. परन्तु व्याकरणशास्त्रे यथा पाणिनिना स्वयं धातुपाठः विरचितः तथैव पाणिनिना प्रातिपदिकपाठः न विरचितः इति अत्र आशयः अस्ति. सो दैट् अधिकृता ऑफिशियल लिस्ट इज नॉट देयर.
अस्तु, धन्यवादः.
Let's go to the next slide. There are no more raised hands, I believe. If you have any further questions, feel free to raise your hands. So lot more slides are still remaining. So dhatavaha. So let's focus more on dhatus. Dhatavaha dvidha, dviprakarakah dhatavaha santi. The first category is very well known, avyutpannaha dhatavaha. So these are the dhatus for which the prakriti pratyay vibhaga is further not possible. So etesham agre prakriti pratyay vibhagah na sambhavati. So this is actually an eye opener over here, that it is not just the pada which is broken down into prakriti pratyaya, but there are even dhatus that can be broken down into prakriti pratyaya, and some dhatus can be and some cannot be. The ones that cannot be broken into the prakriti pratyay vibhaga, ete avyutpannaha dhatavaha, etesham agre prakriti pratyay vibhagah na sambhavati. Ete dhatavaha agre dvidha vibhajyate. So avyutpanna dhatus are the dhatus which cannot be further broken down, and obviously the next category is the vyutpanna dhatus. I'll come to that. But avyutpanna dhatus are mostly of two types. 99% of the avyutpanna dhatus are listed in the dhatu patha. So they are called aupadeshika dhatavaha. Aupadeshika means upadeshaha krutaha. Upadesha means Panini explicitly listed them down in the dhatu patha. So ete sarvepi aupadeshika dhatavaha dhatu pathe vidyante. So bhusattaya, medha vruddho spardha sangarsha and so on. So bhu, pacha, patha and so on. All 2000 dhatus that you see listed in the dhatu patha are aupadeshika dhatavas. These constitute 99, probably 99.99% of the avyutpanna dhatavas. However, there are around 30 or so dhatus which are avyutpanna, which are seen in the language, and Panini uses these dhatus in his own sutras. So for example, there is a dhatu called ruta. He uses it in a sutra by giving a certain action, by giving a certain pratyay to it. There is another dhatu stambha. Panini uses is in this in his one of the sutras. He says for such and such dhatu stambha, you should use such and such vikarana and so on. So there are this handful of dhatus which are actually seen in Panini sutras, but you cannot see them in the dhatu patha. So maybe Panini just missed them out, or maybe while the dhatu patha was transferred across the generation, it got lost or whatever. But we call them sautra dhatavaha. Kevalam sutreshu drishyante. Dhatu pathe navartante. Ete sautra dhatavaha. Only 30 of them. So avyutpannaha dhatavaha iti te dhatavaha yesham agre prakriti pratyay vibhagaha navartate. Sautraha dhatavaha iti tesham ekaha upavibhagaha केवलं त्रिंशदेव. अन्ये सर्वे औपदेशिक धातवः एतेषाम् अग्रे एतेषाम् आवली धातु पाठे दत्ता वर्तते. So that's the avyutpanna dhatus. The second is called vyutpanna dhatus, also called atideshika dhatus. This name has to be remembered. Also called sanadyanta dhatus. The name has to be remembered. These are those special weird looking dhatus like kashtaya, satyapi, putriya, chikathisha and so on. So etesham agre prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha sambhavati. So dhatus themselves can be broken down Like, for example, science tells us that molecules can be broken down into atoms, and now even atoms can be broken down into protons and neutrons, and they further can be broken down into subatomic particles and so on. So these dhatus can be broken down into different prakriti and pratyaya, and what kind of prakriti and pratyaya exists, based on that these are classified into two groups. So see how vast this whole cyclic nature is. So vyutpannaha dhatavah etesham agre prakriti pratyaya vibhagah sambhavati एते द्विविधाः सन्ति. सुबंत padam plus sanadi pratyayah. So there is a special group of pratyayas called sanadi pratyayas. These pratyayas are attached to a subanta pada. So understand the cyclic nature. You first take a pratipadika, add a sup pratyaya on it, create a subanta pada, and now you can use that subanta pada in the language, or you can add a sanadi pratyaya on the top of it. So putram iti dvitiya ekvachanam asti putra shabdasya. This is a subanta. You add a pratyaya called kyach on it. It is a special pratyaya called sanadi pratyaya, and you get a new dhatu called putriya. This is a dhatu now. Similarly, you take the subanta called kashtaya. That is the chaturthi ekvachana of the word kashta, kashtaya. Add a kyang pratyaya on it. Some magic happens and you get back kashtaya, but now it has worn a different coat. It is no more that original subanta, it is a dhatu. So subanta padam plus sanadi pratyaya gives dhatu, and these dhatus are generated from the namapadas. So putram is a namapada, kashtaya is a namapada. So namapadebhyah ete sarve dhatavah siddhaha, atah ete namadhatavah iti bhashayam prasiddhaः santi. So simple non-Paninian grammar books, basically the introductory grammar books, they will use the word called namadhatus. That's also okay. In Vyakarana, the more technical term is atideshika dhatus or sanabhyanta dhatus. Essentially, they are made from the namapada. That's just one category. The second category is the same sanadi pratyaya can be added to an original dhatu also. So understand, not tinganta. You cannot add sanadi pratyaya on a tinganta, only on dhatu. Whereas in the previous expression, it is not pratipadika. You cannot add a sanadi pratyaya on the pratipadika. It has to be a subanta. So subanta plus sanadi pratyaya, that was the first group, and dhatu plus sanadi pratyaya. So you can have katha, which is the dhatu, add a sanadi pratyaya, and you get back a dhatu. What is the difference? The original dhatu is the aupadeshika dhatu. It was present in the dhatu patha. It is avyutpanna. When you add a nich on it, you get a new dhatu which is atideshika, but it is still a dhatu. There is nothing different as far as the dhatutva is concerned. Katha is also a dhatu, kathi is also a dhatu. And now you can repeat the cycle. So use the same kathi dhatu, put it back in the same expression. Kathi, add another pratyaya, which is again a sanadi pratyaya. So kathi plus san becomes chikathisho. And then you can put it back and then add another san pratyaya and so on. So the cycle continues. So this way, vyutpanna dhatus, this means that just like pratipadikas, dhatus can be infinite in nature, because you can create new dhatus. This is a machinery to create new dhatus. So this way, vyutpanna dhatus technically infinite, avyutpanna dhatus around 2000. Similarly, pratipadikānām prakārah, Paniniya Vyakarane dviprakarakaani pratipadikāni santi. Same, vyutpanna versus avyutpanna. Avyutpannani pratipadikāni, etani pratipadikāni, etesham agre ashtadhyayi sutraihi prakriti pratyaya vibhagah na sambhavati. So if you take pratipadika like Lakshmi or Vayu or Talu or Prathama, Tadit, Brahman, and so on, many words are there. You cannot break them down into Prakriti and Pratyaya in the frame of Paninian grammar. If you jump slightly outside the frame of Paninian grammar, you can do that. I'm going to talk about it in one of the upcoming classes. But for now, inside the frame of Paninian grammar, you cannot do this Prakriti Pratyaya Vibhaga. And when you are studying Paniniya Vyakarana, you are not allowed to jump outside that frame. So these are technically avyutpannani pratipadikani as far as Paniniya Vyakarana is concerned. And the second category is obviously vyutpannani pratipadikani. एतेषाम् अग्रे प्रकृति प्रत्यय विभागः संभवति. So just like the way we have vyutpanna dhatus, we have vyutpanna pratipadika. Somebody asked a question right now, and there are 4 such types of vyutpanna pratipadikas. Very familiar classes. I think most of you will know these classes. Krudanta pratipadikas. So krudanta pratipadikas like pachaka are generated when a krut pratyaya is added on a dhatu. So that's dhatu plus krut pratyaya. Tadhitanta pratipadikas. They are generated when a tadhita pratyaya is added either on a subanta or on a pratipadika. So you can add a tadhita pratyaya on a subanta. For example, Dasharathasya. This is the Shashthyanta subanta shabda. Add iya on the top of it. You get Dasharathi. And some tadhita pratyas can be added to pratipadikas. So patutama, this is the word which is a pratipadika which is generated by adding tamap pratyaya, which is a tadhita pratyaya on a pratipadika called patu. So pratipadikam plus tadhita pratyaya gives the pratipadikam. Subantam plus tadhita pratyaya also gives pratipadikam. So that's the second category. You have krudanta pratipadikas, you have tadhitanta pratipadikas, you have stri pratyayanta pratipadikas. Add dev, you start with deva and add neep pratyaya, which is a stri pratyaya. So stri pratyaya, and then you get devi, which is a stri pratyayanta pratipadikam. So krudanta pratipadikam, tadhitanta pratipadikam, stri pratyayanta pratipadikam, and then there is the fourth very interesting class, samasta pratipadikam, a pratipadikam that is generated by the samasa process. Two subantas get combined. There is no explicit pratyaya over here. I'll talk about it in a minute, but there is no explicit on the face of it. You don't see a pratyaya over here. Very strange equation. Two subantas get combined together to form a samasta pratipadikam. So Sitayaha, this is the Shashthyanta pada. Patihi, this is the Prathamanta pada. Two subantas get combined together to form a samasta pratipadika. Very interesting set of equations. So that was basically a running commentary on the pratipadikas. I think on this screen there is a lot to digest. Go back and look at this screen again after the class. So we had dhatus of 2 types, we had pratipadikas of 2 types, and now let's talk about pratyayas. These pratyayas, there are 500 pratyayas defined in Ashtadhyayi. So again, 500 shabdaha varna samudaya ityavartha. 500 shabdaha pratyaya samnaya pathitaha santi. Ayam pratyaya, like that 500 words are given. They are of 7 different types. So dhatu is only of 2 types, pratipadika is only of 2 types, and the pratyaya is of 7 different types. All the pratyayas are added to prakrutis, and after a pratyaya is added, other words are formed. You can see that pratipadikas can be formed, dhatus can be formed, even suvantas can be formed, tigantas can be formed. So prakrutihi ityasya chatvarha bhedaha. Pratipadikam can be a prakriti, dhatu can be a prakriti, a subanta can be a prakriti, a tiganta can be a prakriti. Technically, tiganta, except for one pratyaya, there are no other pratyas that get added to tiganta. So you can keep tinganta aside, but just for the sake of completion or completeness, I have written tinganta over here. But pratipadikam, dhatu, subantam, these are mainly prakritis. And then there is a pratyaya, sup, ting. So I have listed 7 types of pratyayas. Sup and ting are very well known. Krut pratyaya, all of us know. Tadhita pratyayas, those special types, sanadi pratyayas. Vikarna pratyayas, which don't come separately, but they come along with the ting pratyaya, like nrutyati. That ya that you hear is the vikarana pratyaya. Or say in the krut prakriya also you get the vikarana pratyaya. So for example, pachan or say nrutyad. In this shatru pratyayanta word, there is this ya vikarana pratyaya that is coming, and the stri pratyaya. So 7 different types of pratyayas. When they are added to prakriti, you get a pratyayanta shabda, which can be a pratipadikam, a dhatu, a sumantam, or a tingantam. So what you are seeing on the screen right now, prakritihi plus pratyayaha is equal to pratyayamta shabdaha. This is the most fundamental equation of Paniniya Vyakarana. Just like every Shastra has a fundamental law, like for example, in biology, you can say all life forms are made up of DNA and RNA and so on. So every Shastra will have their own fundamental law. The entire Shastra is built on those fundamental set of laws. In Vyakarana Shastra, the most fundamental Moolabhutaha Vyakarana Shastrasya Niyamaha Prakritihi plus Pratyayaha is equal to Pratyayanta Shabdaha. And there are a few raised hands, but I'll come to them in a minute. And let's talk a little bit more about this 7 types of pratyas and how they interact. This is one of my favorite diagrams. I use it in every of my slide deck for last 10 years. Slight modifications have been done just to suit the audience. So in simpler classes, I simplify this, but in the at least the classes of Paniniya Vyakarana, I want to be more technically correct. So we have these 4 types of prakritis. We have pratipadikam, we have dhatu, we have subantam, we have tingantam. These are also the pratyanta shabdas. So the result of that equation, you can generate a pratipadikam, you can generate a dhatu, you can generate a subantam, you can generate a tingantam, and see the interaction. When you add a sup pratyaya to a pratipadika, you get a subantam. So pratipadikam plus sup pratyaya is subantam. Similarly, on the other side, dhatu plus ting pratyaya becomes tingantam. So dhatu and ting along with the vikarana, obviously, if it is needed. So tingantam. And then dhatu plus krut pratyaya will give a pratipadikam. So that's a channel for taking a dhatu to a pratipadika. So dhatu plus krut pratyaya will give pratipadikam. Reverse direct path is not there. So you cannot directly go from pratipadik to dhatu, but you can go from pratipadik to subanta using the sup pratyaya, and then you can use the sanadi pratyaya. So subanta plus sanadi pratyaya, that gives dhatu. And speaking of this sanadi pratyayas, you can also add sanadi pratyayas to dhatus to create an infinite cycle. So dhatu plus sanadi pratyaya is equal to dhatu. And similarly, you can have tadhita pratyayas which take subanta back to pratipadika. So subanta plus tadhita goes back to pratipadika. Or you can loop in a pratipadika chain. So pratipadikam plus stri becomes pratipadikam. Pratipadikam plus tadhita will become pratipadikam. So this diagram basically captures, take a printout and put it on the wall or blackboard or whatever. But this particular diagram, it captures the essence of what we call as the fundamental theorem of Paniniya Vyakarana. Prakruti plus Pratyayaha is equal to Pratyayanta Shabdaha. Krishna Kumar Mahoday.
Mahodaya, in the first, can you go to the previous slide, please, if you don't mind? See here, you have written Prakriti, Pratipadikam, Dhatuhu, Subantam, Tingantam, you have written. Now, in the first 1 or 2 slides you have mentioned, if I recollect, Api plus Su. So, is Avyam also comes as Pratipadika, Prakriti?
I defined, I have this explicit word over here, right? Avyayas are themselves Pratipadikas. So where is that?
Okay.
It's on one of the, yeah, over here. So Pratipadik Samnya example, Api is a Pratipadik Samnika. Pra, which is Upasarga, is also Pratipadik Samnika. Okay?
Okay. Astu Mahodaya.
Purnima Bhagini.
महोदय तदेव तत्र प्रातिपदिकस्य द्विधा विभागः तत्र अयुत्पन्नानि प्रातिपदिकानि युत्पन्नानि प्रातिपदिकानि ज्ञातुं शक्यते इति तत् युत्पन्नम् अस्ति इति किन्तु अयुत्पन्नानि प्रातिपदिकानां कृते दृष्ट्वा एव वक्तुं न शक्यते खलु इदं युत्पन्नः अस्ति वा इति
Like dhatu pathe dhatu asti chet avyutpannaha, dhatu pathe nasti chet vyutpannaha. So that is easy on that side, but here it's not possible. Just by looking at an avyutpanna pratipadika, or I mean just by looking at a pratipadika, it's a little hard to tell whether it is avyutpanna or vyutpanna. That is correct. Okay. Krishna Kumara Mahoday.
Mahodaya, one question. So if I take the word Rama as Pratipadika, so can I say that it is Vyutpannali Pratipadika?
So obviously, because Rama is a Krudanta Pratipadika.
Ram because
Rama is the dhatu and Ghai is the pratyaya, right? So if it is a Krudanta Pratipadika, I mean Panini defines the Ghai pratyaya in his system and he says apply Ghai on Rama to give Rama. So it is a Vyutpanna Pratipadika, right? But for example, Vayu, this can be considered Vyutpanna. There are systems where you can consider Vayu as Vyutpanna. You say Va means to flow as a dhatu and Una as an apratyaya. So they divide the word Vayu, Va plus Una. But the point is, Una is not a pratyaya given by Panini. So out of those 500 pratyayas that Panini gives, he doesn't mention Una as a pratyaya. He acknowledges that there might be other pratyayas in other systems, but he doesn't accept them or he doesn't give them as a direct pratyaya in his system. Therefore, that's why I clearly said Ashtadhyayi Sutranam Adharena Prakriti Pratyaya Vibhagana Sambhavati. If you jump outside the Ashtadhyayi framework, it is possible to do the Prakriti Pratyaya Vibhaga, but within the framework, Vayu cannot be broken down into Va plus Una because Una is not an authorized pratyaya in the system. Clear?
Dhanyavad.
In fact, talking about this division of avyutpanna pratipadikas by going outside the system, there is actually a siddhanta which says that there are no avyutpanna pratipadikas at all. Every pratipadika in the language can be broken down into dhatu plus pratyaya. So, pratipadika, just like the krudanta pratipadika is divisible into dhatu plus krut pratyaya, every pratipadika in the world can be divided into dhatu plus pratyaya. I'm not saying krut pratyaya. Dhatu plus pratyaya. The only caveat is that pratyaya need not be one of those accepted 500 pratyayas in the Paninian system. But if you keep that restriction aside, then sarvepi pratipadika samyaka shabdaha dhatujaha dhatu nirmitaha iti kashchana siddhantaha vartate. So I'm going to talk about this probably 3 classes later, but this is not something we want to deal in our course because this is stepping outside the boundaries of Paniniya Vyakarana. Feel free to raise the hand if there is any question. I think there are 1 or 2 more slides, very simple. So let's actually finish the slide deck. So after this whole complicated diagram, and I really want everybody to remember, memorize this, all possible connections from here and there, because these are the connections that are going to be used throughout our course. So summarizing this particular diagram in a different way, Kesham Shabdanam Prakriti Pratyaya Vibhagaha Sambhavati. So we started the class by saying it is just a pada which is broken down into the either Pratipadika plus Supratyaya or Dhatu plus Ting Pratyaya, but that's not the full reality. Now we know the full reality. Kesham Prakriti Pratyaya Vibhagaha Sambhavati. A Subanta pada is broken down into Pratipadika plus Supratyaya. A Tinganta padam is broken down into Dhatu plus Ting Pratyaya. These we have already seen. A krudanta can be broken down into dhatu plus kruta. Tadhitanta can be broken down into, so that's a pratipadika. So krudanta pratipadika can be broken down. A tadhitanta pratipadika can be broken down in one of the 2 ways. A stri pratyanta pratipadika can be broken down into pratipadikam plus stri pratyaya. So certain pratipadikas can also be broken down. These are the vyutpanna pratipadikas. And similarly, dhatus can be broken down. These are the atideshika dhatus or sanadhyanta dhatus or vyutpanna dhatus. So they can be further broken down. So you have subantas that are, all subantas are breakable, all tingantas are breakable, some pratipadikas are breakable, and some dhatus are breakable. And then you have a samasta pratipadikam, a very special case, which is on the face of it broken down into subanta plus subanta. But then you go one step below, and that subanta is broken down into pratipadikam plus supratyaya. So if you combine the 2 steps, then a samasta pratipadikam is essentially pratipadikam plus pratyaha plus another pratipadikam plus another pratyaha. So Sita Pati is Sita plus Shashti Ekvachanam Ngasa plus Pati plus Prathama Ekvachanam Su. So 2 pratipadikas and 2 pratyas combined together, not combined together in the sense with each other, but pratipadika combined with pratyaya and another pratipadika combined with pratyaya, they further combine together to form samasta pratipadikam. So etesham sarvesham prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha sambhavati. And then ask a counter question. Kesham prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha na sambhavati. So avyutpanna pratipadikana paniniya vyakaranasya adharena prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha na sambhavati. Aupadeshika dhatus, the dhatus listed in the dhatu patha or the sutra patha. So sautra dhatus or the dhatu pathe vidyamanaha dhatavaha. Etesham prakriti pratyaya vibhagaha na sambhavati. So that's Aupadeshika and Sautra, because the word Aupadeshika only represents those 2000, plus you have Sautra. Then Pratyayanam Prakriti Pratyaya Vibhaga na Sambhavati. That's no brainer. You cannot break tumun or kt or ktva and so on. So pratyanam prakriti pratyay vibhaga na sambhavati. Now come more interesting things. Sandhi karyena ye shabdaha ekatrīkritaha vartante tesham sakshat prakriti pratyay vibhagah na sambhavati parantu आदौ व्याकरणस्य एव सूत्रैः तेषां पृथक् शब्देषु विभाजनं भवति. So even though Vyakarana is about Prakriti Pratyay Vibhaga, it can be used for Shabda Vibhaga also if a Kruta Sandhi word, a word with Sandhi, where Sandhi has been done, is presented. So Nadiyam can be broken down with the same set of sutras into Nadi plus Yam. Or Suruddhasati can be further broken down into Surud plus Hasati. This is not a Prakriti Pratyay Vibhaga, this is just a Vibhaga into Shabdas, because we are not starting with a single pada. So when you are saying Nadiyam, it's not a single pada. You cannot, break it down into Pratipadika or Dhatu plus Pratyaya. It is simply two words combined together. So again, coming back to the question that was asked by someone, is Nadiyam a Shabda in a Bhasha? On a loose scale, yes, you can say Nadiyam iti Shabdaha. But as far as Vyakarana or strict grammar is concerned, it is a combination of two padas, Nadi and Yam. The word Shabda is very loosely used in the grammar, as I mentioned, and it has more deeper meaning associated with it in the Arthi Granthas, which we don't need to bother about. For now, we continue to use the word Shabda to say a Varna Samudaya. So Sandhi karyena ekatrīkrutānām padanam, and finally Vakyasya Prakriti Pratyay Vibhagah na sambhavati. Very fundamental. A Vakya cannot be broken down into Prakriti Pratyay Vibhaga, parantu Vakye Vidyamananam Pruthak Padanam Prakriti Pratyay Vibhaga avashyam sambhavati. So Ramaha Gruham Gacchati ityatra Ramaha Gruham Gacchati iti त्रीणि padani etesham sarvesham Prakriti Pratyay Vibhagah sambhavati. So that was the whole concept idea of today's class, to give you a quick primer on what Prakriti Pratyay Vibhaga is all about. And let me reiterate this. The concept of Prakriti Pratyay Vibhaga is extremely central to Paninian grammar. I'm going to talk about counter side of this aspect. So basically today, all that I talked about is Pratyayanta Shabda being of two types, Prakriti and Pratyaya, broken down into two types, two parts, Prakriti and Pratyaya. Tomorrow we are going to flip the side and we are going to say how Prakriti and Pratyaya are combined to form the Pratyayanta Shabda. So that's where the entire grammar plays the role. All the 4,000 sutras will be employed over there. So this is the fundamental equation of Sanskrit grammar. Prakriti plus Pratyaya is the Pratyayanta Shabda. Shabdasya Prakriti Pratyaya Rupena Vibhajanam iti eva Vyakaranasya Mulaha Vishayaha. And that is why for today's homework, I have done something really brave. The first question asks you to write a complete article. Paniniya Vyakarane Prakriti Pratyay Vibhagaha iti Vishayam Adhikrutya Ekam Lekham Likhata. Write a full-fledged article that you can then give for publishing in whichever magazine you want. Ayam Lekhaha Sampurna Rupena Samskritena Lekhaniyaha. You can either type the article or write in a legitimate handwriting. Some people have very weird, pathetic handwriting. I have been telling them fix their handwriting or use computer and type it. Your article must have minimum 50 sentences. I will count and I will send the homework back if there are less than 50 sentences. More the merrier. You can create 500 sentences also. So lekhe nyunati nyunam panchashat vakyani bhaveyuhu. No व्याकरण दोषास लेखे व्याकरण दोषाः न भवेयुः लेखे विद्यमानं प्रत्येकं वाक्ये विद्यमाने प्रत्येकं वाक्ये पदानि एव भवेयुः, not प्रातिपदिकम or dhatu separate. And you have to write it not just as a random set of sentences but as an article which you can actually give for publishing to some magazine or whatever. So lekhe ado vishayasya thochitam prarambhaha. You give an introduction, Kramena Upasthapanam, take all different points from today's presentation, and then Samapanam, Varge Pathitaha Sarvepi Vishayaha Lekhe Sammilitaha Bhaveyuhu. You are most welcome to use your other knowledge, extra reading, and add more things to the material discussed today. But whatever is discussed today is so fundamental that everything must come in your article. And because this is a significantly big question, the next is very simple. I have given 10 instances of Prakriti plus Pratyaya is equal to Padam. I have also given the type of the Prakriti, whether it is a Pratipadikam, Subantam, Dhatu, and so on. I have given the type of Pratyaya, the Supratyaya, Tadhita Pratyaya, and so on. And one is the fill in the blanks. Either you have to write fill for the Prakriti or for the Pratyaya or for the Pada. So this is going to be very simple exercise, again based on the central theme of Prakriti plus Pratyaya is equal to Padam or Pratyayanta Shabdaha. So that's the homework for today. If there are no questions, samapayamaha. Shvaha punarekvaram asminev same vargaha bhavishyati. I'll wait for a few seconds. Assuming there are no questions, we can stop. Astu. If you get more questions, feel free to ask them on the group. अष्टाध्यायी जगन्माता यस्य चित्तात् समुत्थिता वेदानामुपकाराय तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. शब्द ब्रह्म समाराध्य कृतवान् यो विलक्षणं सर्वाश्चर्यमिदं शास्त्रं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. येन धौता गिरः पुंसां विमलैः शब्दवारिभिः तमश्चाज्ञानजं भिन्नं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः. धन्यवादः.